Hello, friends, and happy Wednesday afternoon. I hope everything's going well for you, and welcome to Weather Peace. Let's seek Hello, friends. Happy Wednesday afternoon, and welcome back to WeatherWord. Let's seek God's peace together for the foundation that we need. Looking at the weather for the latter part of this week, the main feature is going to be a strong low that crosses quickly across the northern U.S. and brings changes to a lot of the east and central U.S. as we work towards the weekend. First of all, let's start with an apology, because I emphasized last weekend and earlier this week that it was going to be quiet weather. And for most of the country, I think that's really been true. Pretty typical, nothing crazy. But, well, first of all, in Florida, it's a bit chillier today than I kind of pictured. This isn't even a cold front. Usually when we see cool weather here, it's cold front related. And we had a cold front a couple days ago, but today we got socked in with a real thick layer of clouds. And so it's only been in the 50s, which for people like me, that's like bitter cold. I know the rest of the country sees that and just laughs. But for the rest of the country, places like Oklahoma and Michigan and friends in those places, Colorado, North Carolina, it hasn't been too crazy. Louisiana. But sometimes we overlook the extremities of the country. And I know I talked a little bit about the Pacific Northwest, but they've had a storm system pass through the last couple days. I checked last night, and it actually had knocked out power for about 500,000 people each in Washington and Oregon. And so they get these wind systems every winter. It's kind of it's the typical weather for them. But this one's been particularly strong, and they've had this long succession of one system after another. So don't want to overlook. This has been a pretty significant storm for them this week. It looks like it's weakening for them. The conditions are getting better. The power's starting to come back. I saw there's still some people out in Washington, quite a few, but it's gotten better, but really windy, really rainy, and so that is one part of the country that's seen some more active weather. But like I said, like I've been saying this week, most of the country a little quieter, starting to change. Let's look at the weather map about now, this afternoon, this evening. You can see across the central U.S. is a very weak front. It's really just like a wind shift, nothing much to it. Over the south, the reason we have all these dark, dreary clouds and this cold weather here is actually an upper level low pressure system. And you usually don't see those too often in the winter, totally disconnected from surface lows and surface fronts. But really, this is kind of its own system. I guess it's kind of related to the last cold front that passed through, but it really is its own little upper low, and it just brought a lot of clouds. And so this isn't true cold air that Florida's had. This is just the daytime didn't heat up. It's not going to get particularly cold tonight. It's not like one of those real cold outbreaks, but boy, I was out earlier and it really felt like it. I mean, it was chilly. When we don't get into the 60s in Florida, or just barely, that's a rare day. We only get like 5 to 10 of those a year. And then the other feature you see is that low up in just north of Montana into Canada, and that front sweeping across the northwest. That's the front, the system that brought the active weather to the Pacific Northwest. And as we go into the next days, let's move into tonight, you can see it starts to move quickly. The lows into the Dakotas, and the front's already into the northern plains, kind of just getting started on its activity, really wrapping up. But you can see it's progressing. Yesterday it was in Oregon. Today it's in Montana. Tonight it's in the plains, and we'll see it continue. Little front over like New York. Nothing much to it. Maybe some rain and a few thunderstorms even across the Carolinas from this upper low and that front kind of combining together to bring a little instability. Nothing crazy. But into tomorrow, there's that low again, getting bigger, getting stronger. It's really wrapping up. It's a really deep low. Now, this isn't to say like, man, this is just end of the world kind of stuff. It's just a stronger system, the kind we see a lot of this year, and you'll see it really doesn't do as much as some, but for the Great Lakes, it's actually going to be a pretty notable system. It's going to bring quite a bit of snow to some spots. It's going to move pretty quick, and so the impacts will be a little more reduced than if it just sat there and spun or just really rocked into the area. But still, you see by tomorrow, the front's already down, pushing across St. Louis area down into Texarkana and Texas. And so this is pushing east quick. You can see by Friday that the cold front is really pushed down across the country. We were talking Tuesday in Oregon, Friday through Florida already. That's how quickly this is pushing across the country. The low itself is kind of wrapped in place, and so you'll get a decent period with some chances for snows and such, and it'll bring some winds across the area. But as we push towards Saturday, you'll see a new low forms off the East Coast, so it kind of transitions quickly across the Northeast compared to some of the systems. This isn't a huge nor'easter pumping up the coast right now, but it spends just enough time over the Great Lakes. It'll bring some snow, bring some winds. I don't think it'll be nearly as impactful as it was to like Washington and Oregon, but overall, it's a moderately strong system. Definitely strong in the Pacific Northwest. I guess, hey, they'd rather that. This summer this fall they had a low pressure that brought these really bad winds and brought wildfires. They get these winds, but I guess they'd rather have winds and rain and snow and stuff like that than they would wildfires. So I guess this isn't the worst thing for the Pacific Northwest, and haven't been out there recently. It's what you see this time of year. Days like this in Florida, it's like every day out there for 10 months out of the year. Another low up north of Minnesota. Weak front, this is just a transitory system. It's not going to bring huge impacts to anybody. The next system next week, it looks like we'll kind of go into another week similar to this week. We'll see kind of a pretty quiet pattern to start the week, and then another maybe, it's a long ways out, but another strong low maybe coming across the northern parts of the U.S. Also some weak systems in the south. There's a kind of split flow to the jet stream, where there's kind of a deep south area and of where there'll be maybe some upper lows like we're seeing right now in Florida and the southeast. And there'll also be kind of those deeper lows will remain pretty far to the north, but sweep the cold fronts across the country. And so won't be those nor'easters that kind of ride these strong lows up the East Coast. It doesn't look like. So far it's looking like they'll be more kind of crossing the U.S. And so they'll bring Great Lakes impacts. That seems an area that's going to get quite a bit. Has gotten a fair bit in the last month and continues to get it. And the same with the Pacific Northwest. They'll be quiet for a few days in like Oregon and Washington, but it's winter. They know it'll be back. So, getting into the word part of today, well, I gotta be honest, it was a struggle again. It was another one of those days like, God, I want to find your word. I was praying, I was seeking the word, and it was just this dread that I'm not going to find something. You've a million times before seen where God has led you to something, where God has worked something miraculous, and I don't know. I have. And the first time I still go, I don't know. I don't feel it right now. Are you sure? Satan's so good at making you question everything that you've known. Because you can so easily look at all the past times God's worked, and because it's not right now, you can go, well, maybe not. Maybe there was no miracle to that. Maybe there was no fingerprints of God. Maybe it was just stuff that happened. It's so easy. I hate it. God works miracles. Kind of reminded me of a day last year, somebody's birthday, a day that was supposed to be very special to me. And the whole day, I just didn't feel it. I was looking forward to some special get together and special time, and it wasn't there. And the whole day just kept going, and I started to give up hope. And at the last minute again, God came through in ways I couldn't even imagine. And I had to hold to faith, but I sure didn't feel it. I just don't see it. Remember what God did. Try to go back to, He did this, He's going to do it again. The 1,000,001st time, God has to prove Himself, has to show up. Hey, we're relying upon Him. It even says you have to forgive your brother 70 times, 7 times. The 489th time you go, okay, I'm done with this. I can't anymore. And it's the same with trusting God. Okay, God, it's the 489th time. You came through every other time, but are you really going to come through this time? I'm going to believe, but I don't see it. Bam, He comes through. So the word today that God brought me, and even when He brought it to me, at first it was like, what? Again, I think you'll see that theme a lot when I'm talking. It was kind of a theme that I don't really like to preach about or talk about, and a theme that over time has been kind of a struggle to me, but even more, I think it's a struggle to other people. And so I don't want to lay a burden to people. But what God took me to was Romans 15, 25 through like 27. And it reads as such from King James. This is Paul talking. This is Romans. So he's talking to the Romans and saying to them what's going on. But now I go unto Jerusalem to minister unto the saints. For it hath pleased them of Macedonia and Achaia to make a certain contribution for the poor saints which are at Jerusalem. It hath pleased them verily, and their debtors they are. For if the Gentiles have been made partakers of the spiritual things, their duty is also to minister unto them in the carnal things. Wherefore I have performed this, and have sealed to them this fruit. I will come by you, or therefore, when therefore I have performed this, and have sealed to them this fruit, I will come to you unto Spain. So the thing that spoke to me in this, the message I saw in this, connected to like money. And kind of the theme is tithing. And tithing to me, well, I know it's a struggle to a lot of people, like the idea of it. And the last year or so, God's been showing me a lot of things through pastors, through the Word, and convincing me on it. And so I'm convinced tithing is an important principle, is something we're supposed to do. I know Jesus in the New Testament didn't literally lay out and say we have to give 10%. In the end, it's a choice you have to make. But some pastors have taught on how there's 3 different types of money giving, kind of laid out in the Bible. 3 or 4 different people say different things. But there's tithes and first fruits, and that's not what this is about. This specific verse is not talking about these kind of things, but it's a theme in the Old Testament. It's a theme in parts of the New Testament, giving your first fruits. If you're saying you trust God, I mean, I've liked to do that for a long time, out of respect, it's the right thing to do, but it's something more. It's God's done this for you. And do you believe in Him enough to trust with that first 10%? I know it's not easy. Give Him 10% of your money. And look, you've got to decide on what you're going to do, if it's 10% or what. But the Word does talk about the 10%. And I try my best to do it. Not because I'm some perfect person. And it's a struggle sometimes. But are you reflecting that to God? We've talked a lot about trusting God. Trust is an action. It isn't just, I believe, so I'm happy. And the same with worship. It's not just, thank you, God, the end. It's put it into action. If you're believing God, if you're thankful to God, if God is bringing you your things and if He's moving you, give Him the first 10%. That is the ultimate trust. You're saying, here, I'm giving you my best. It started all the way back with Cain and Abel and Esau, and there's all these different people about, do you give your best or do you give what's easy to give? And God knows it's not easy sometimes. He knows you want to spend that money on something else. Where are your priorities? So that's a challenge. This verse isn't about tithing. The second kind of giving is alms, and that's giving to the poor and to those destitute and to those suffering. And it kind of goes into that. And I mean, does God have a classification system? It all kind of runs together, but I do see some teaching where each different thing is slightly different. But then there's seeds. And so many pastors preach on planting seeds and sowing seeds, and I've always been kind of hesitant. It's funny, right after I read this, at the very end, God led me to Mark 4, and it talked about seeds and sowing seeds. And man, the ultimate, put your faith into action. I mean, I talked about it in tithes. That's kind of a respect thing. It's kind of a thankfulness thing. This is, I'm all in with God. This is put everything on God and say, look, I don't have much, I'm giving it all. Or I'm giving what you called me to give. It's funny, what I was originally thinking to talk about today, what's been on my heart and mind the last couple days, has been pride. And it was kind of we need to be humble, a lot of politics and a lot of just, look, it was coming from my own heart, because I have been a prideful person through my life, and I was going to talk about my past and how much I loved how much I sought to be the winner of everything. And I am a prideful person, I tell you. You may not see it now. I hope you don't see it now. But if there is one of the deadly sins, if there is one vice that I have always struggled with, it's pride. And I know it's true. It's something I see a lot in those people who are close to me. It's something that's it's a big deal for scientists. They struggle with it a lot, and they need to be open more to ideas. And so my heart was on that, and I'm going to humble yourself under the mighty hand of God. But God wasn't really preaching that to me. So it was going to be me putting my own ideas together. And the whole day it was like, I can do this, but I know it's not the same, and I know it's not yours. I need you to write this message. I need to preach what's yours instead of what I want to preach. That's a message I like to bring. It's something I know, and I think about a lot, and I push people on at times. Tithing, on the other hand, is something I'm comfortable doing it. I know a lot of friends aren't, but it's funny because I was thinking about pride, and the other thing I was thinking about was thankfulness, and God was pushing me towards being thankful, and I kept seeing Facebook messages from different people saying, be thankful for what you have. Friends talking to me about my life and their life, and then also like posts of Bible verses, and they all just kind of came together. Be thankful. Well, tithes is that in coming together. There's a lot of you, and I know this from my own heart, who tithing's kind of that thing where they see it their way. They want to do it their way. You want to do it your way. You say, this is how I'm doing it. And that's the kind of place where maybe we have some pride. We're saying, we want this. There's nothing in the Bible that says don't tithe. You know that. There's nothing in the Bible that says don't give alms. And look, my family, my father pushed me on, the church is trying to steal your money and push you for every bit. And there are people out there who are trying to pull your money out of you and use it for their own benefits and aren't following God and aren't doing God's things. Do you trust God to take care of that money? That's who I'm giving it. When you're giving it, you're not giving it to that man. You're giving it to God and saying, God, I trust you that you can use this money, that you have a purpose for this money. And it's not always about feeding the poor or the hungry. Number one, the preachers are worthy of being treated well. They do deserve, they give up so much. I talked the other day about the price of being a pastor, like how I've thought about it, and they do deserve something. So it's not, God, you have to do with it what I want you to do with it. No, sometimes God gave the people who labored 1 hour, Jesus said, you promised the guy who labored 1 hour the same as the guy who labored 24 hours or 12 hours. That's what he deserves. That's what you've promised to give him. Sometimes what people are getting isn't what you want to have it be. Your vision of fairness isn't the same. So don't focus, please, on what, God, use it this way. I know you can use it to perform miracles and heal the sick. If you trust God, like I talked about last time, like my heart was on last time, like just keeps pushing on my heart. It isn't do this or do that. It's, God, I trust you. I'm walking forward by faith. You have to make the best of it. And look, you got to be careful where you put your money. I do believe in putting it in a church, even if you're not in that church. But even if you go to a church for 1 week and you don't feel it, you can still put that money there usually. God can take care of it. It's not, I need to send a message. God knows what he's doing. Now you decide each week. Pray. I'm not telling you how to do things. And look, God loves a cheerful giver. If you're going in there saying, I'm going to earn this, or if you're thinking, I have to do this because, if you're saying, I deserve this, if you're thinking afterwards, I've done this so I get, you aren't giving to God. You aren't planting a seed. You're in your own mind. You're in your own things. You're not trusting God. You're trusting what you're thinking. So I know tithing is a tough issue for a lot of people, and I do think, and I know it's a challenge on pride. And I'm thankful that I can maybe be, I hope you can see from me, I'm a third-party voice. I'm not asking for your money. I don't want your money. And honestly, that's always been my passion. I'm not going to, Lord willing, I don't want to ask for your money. I know, and it's funny, pride for me is a little different. I can handle things if it's just me. if the Lord blesses me one day and I have a family, and maybe He has me still doing these weather words and weather things, I might have to ask one day for the money if I want them to be happy. And that's a challenge. That's the biggest challenge for me. I don't want to be a stumbling block to people. And I don't want to be controversial to people, I guess. But when it comes between, I can either take care of and bless my family, or I can stand on my principles. That's a matter of principles that I like, that I enjoy. It's not like I have to be this way. That's a matter of pride. And so that may become a very big challenge for me. We all have our own issues where we say, no, I want to do it this way. And God says, no, you've got to do it this way to follow me. And it's funny, in that verse, going back to that verse, so this is about planting seeds or alms, kind of those. I guess it's more alms. But it's interesting how it connects. It starts with, it pleased the people of Macedonia and Achaia to give a contribution to the poor saints. So that's an alm. It pleased them verily, greatly. But Paul continues, that's what an alm is. A tithe is kind of set, your responsibility. An alm is kind of something extra you're giving to special people that you're supposed to give. And then a seed is something, it's totally a choice. What do you choose? What are you going to do? It's not a requirement. It's, I'm investing in God. I'm trusting in God. God asked me to do this. I'm going to do it. But in verse 27, this alm, it pleased them. It should please them. But you go to verse 27, they're debtors. Paul points out, it should please them. And they're debtors they are. They're indebted to them. I mean, these are the people, Achaia and Macedonia are benefiting from the spiritual things of Jerusalem. And they are the heart of it. They brought it. They are why Christ was here, Israel. They are the line. They are the forerunners, in a sense. If you're benefiting in spiritual things, which are supposed to be the biggest things, their duty, it goes from they're pleased to their duty is to minister unto them in the carnal things. And I mean, when it comes to alms specifically, it is our duty to take care of those who are suffering and weak, and the widows and the orphans. And don't be weary in well doing. I know I've got some friends. I know in my life we just keep giving, and there's no response. There's no life. Nothing more is coming. Keep planting those seeds. God has a purpose. It is our duty. Don't forget it. You can't go to God, I've been doing this forever, you owe me. Now, if you got to be careful on that attitude. But God will reward you. Be not weary in well-doing, for God will reward you in due time if you trust in Him. So it's funny, all those thoughts about pride and being thankful. Then I read this, and I'm like, what in the world? But then it all started to piece together. It's amazing how God will piece things together when I can't see it and you want to give up. That's what I'm telling you. Get in the Word. But don't, if you read a few chapters and I'm not getting it, ask the Holy Spirit to open your eyes, open your spiritual eyes, open your understanding. He will do it. He will make things come together and make sense. And then you can go, look, that is God. He did this. Because I'll tell you this, before I worked with God, and okay, this is where you want me to read. The first thing God pulled me to read was James 3. And I was like, God, I've preached on this time and again, and I've read this 100 times. James is probably my favorite, or my most, it speaks to me. All the words in it is so strong and sharp. Remember the first time I read it as a kid in church, as a teenager in church, going, wow, this is big stuff. But I can't, there's nothing more to say on this. I think I've already said some messages from James 3, and I read it, and I didn't get anything. But I knew when I read it, God said, read that, then I'll take you where you got to go. And right after I read it, the thing that stuck with me when I read James 3 was, who is a wise man and endued with knowledge among you? Let him show out of a good conversation his works with meekness of wisdom. Meekness. There's that pride. There's being wise. show out. Man, God brings messages full circle, and I hope it's tough to even envision, but I know it can be true that God can be using my message, and I want to hear it because I could use the inspiration to know that God really is piecing things together, that what I'm saying, what you're listening to, is actually a part of what God's doing. It would be a great blessing to me to know if that's really the case, but I'm trusting in God. So be meek, be humble. I got a lot to work on in that, we all do. But part of that might be giving that tithe, or that alm, or that offering, or going to church, or forgiving somebody, or being patient, or something in pride, something political that you're stuck, it's got to be a certain way. We need more than ever to be willing to see that things might be another way, to go in and look at the basic information and openly and see what it has to say instead of looking for what we want to see. That's where humility really is. I will say this. This morning, somebody posted about how there's some doctor, he's like a plastic surgeon, that's saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't give everybody 2 vaccines. Maybe we should give more people 1 vaccine. And there were a lot of people so vehement that that's a horrible idea. The science says the scientists say this. And there was other people who, science is always wrong. Neither of those are the case. And scientists, more than any, are guilty of, they think maybe it's one way, and they're so set. In the article, it talked, the one guy, this is the right way. The other guy said, that's ridiculous. It's the stupidest thing he's ever heard. I've been to conferences where they argue back and forth, and both people just, this is right. No, this is right. The whole idea of science is that you are open to seeing new information. You're not sure of what you see, what you're thinking, until the evidence kind of grows it. And look, I mean, there is importance of standing on truth, but the whole point of science and of God is you look for truth, you're refined by the truth, instead of saying, this is the truth and I want to see it that way, and I'm going to find whatever I can to see it that way. And most importantly, you're humble to the people that don't see it. As scientists, we have to be open to the questions and struggles of people who don't see it our way, who maybe have a distrust of science, or who just can't visualize 3-dimensional kinematic equations and derivatives and all those fancy things. We're not better. We're the same. And so as scientists, if we're saying, if you're thinking, you have to trust me because I know all the answers, you got to calm it down. Part of your job is to help people understand who don't understand, and to be open to the questions of people. And maybe, wow, I never thought of it like that. Take their questions. I mean, that's what love is. Looking at other people, when Paul talks about being a leader, he's not some dictator over the people. He's a fellow servant with them. And so for scientists watching this, if any of my scientist friends, and I know there's a lot of you, and you're great people. I mean, in some ways, man, I wish I'd done more with the science side of my life. But you guys are accomplishing some pretty special things. I got a lot of friends in the weather service and in research and doctors and all kinds of things. But I do want to encourage you, humble yourself. Humble yourself when it comes to your beliefs on science or politics, because I've had to do that a lot the last 20 years, that's for sure. It's what love is. And humble yourself when it comes to, if you are a person in the church, humble yourself when it comes to tithing and alms and first fruits and planting seeds. Because, like I said, I then came to Mark 4 at the end, and he talked about, it was the parable of sowing the seed. And I always hear the church talking seeds and sowing and planting, but there it is. It's a whole long section. Jesus is talking about that, and it's not the only place. It's authentically from the Word, a lot of those ideas. You have to put it in. Trust is burying it to seeing it come up later. It's not just holding it, kind of cautiously giving it. It's diving in. And as I was walking over here, the final thing that came up, 2 Corinthians 4:16 through 18, kind of encouraged me, and kind of should be encouragement for you, those of you maybe doing duty and struggling through things. For which cause we faint not. But though our outward man perish, yet the inward man is renewed day by day. And there goes that thing where each day I got to see it again. We're renewed day by day. Thank God, because he is not leaving you. Seek him and he will bring you through. You've seen it and you'll see it again. God, I pray for victory in the believers listening to this and a blessed and protected week for the next 2 days, the rest of this work week. And I pray to you guys that I ask that I'll see you Friday or sometime soon again, Lord willing. And I wish you well. To God be every glory. Have a great next couple days.